It's June 1st, and I've never been really super great at asking for help. Trying to get better as I age, but I need help moving the hoop houses. It's that time of year where they need to get moved onto their summer spots, and we're gonna have a bunch of people over. They're gonna help with that and some other things in the garden, and then we're gonna have a just good old bonfire picnic get together with a bunch of families that we know. So we're just cleaning up a little bit. Em's mowing the lawn, and I'm gonna do a little bit more cleaning up with some of the stuff in the along the driveway here for the fence. Not finished with the fence, but just got to get some of this cleaned up. What with the fact that I had guests arriving at random times yesterday afternoon, and we were all chatting and having fun while we worked, I completely forgot about recording the actual process of moving the hoop houses. It went pretty well considering I've always done it with a John Deere 3020 and farming winch, which certainly isn't a huge tractor, but is no slouch when it comes to horsepower. I have a series of videos of this process with the tractor if you go way back on my channel to the time when I was farming commercially and writing several blogs for a newspaper and my customers. I'll try to drop a link in the show notes for anyone who's interested. We had a fairly large group, maybe 6 to 10 people at any given moment, and we were able to move both houses without any mechanical assistance, just some good old-fashioned leverage and teamwork. That said, the hoop houses are now in their summer locations, and, as I suspected and hoped, the scissor doors were a huge help on the 32-foot hoop house. At this point in the year, it's almost hard to remember how much of a pain they were when it was super windy in the winter months. I'm trying to keep that in mind and come up with solutions that allow me to use this system because it has a lot of pluses. Now that the hoop houses are on their new summer plots, it's time to get started with planting heat-loving crops into the ground inside them, adding compost, setting up the irrigation, and mulching. One thing with which I've always struggled is an inability to ensure that I'm planting all the specimens of a single variety at the right time. One reason this happens, I think, is that I'm limited on space for my seedlings on the natural heat mat, and sometimes have to rearrange pots so everything fits. Then, when it comes time to plant, I'll grab a tray and take it to the bed in question, but no matter how many times I look over all my variety tags, and no matter how certain I am that I have all the plants gathered together, it seems, every year, on one cultivar or another, I plant an entire row, think I'm done, move on to another variety, and then find a bunch of the first one. In actuality, it's not that big a deal, but there's something aesthetically disappointing about it, and it's quite frustrating. I'm happy to report that this year, at least with the tomatoes, that did not happen. There's a brief window each spring when I don't have a bucket of eggshells drying in the basement. And that window is now, because these shells are about to be crushed, put into the ground beneath each tomato plant. I've talked about this before, but it's really important. One of the challenges that gardeners and farmers face is growing tomatoes that don't split or crack, particularly on the blossom end. Most people think that the splitting is a result of water fluctuations. Too much water all of a sudden when it's been dry, or a very dry spell when it's been quite wet. It is true that that results in splitting, but the actual cause is lack of calcium. If the tomatoes have enough calcium, they can withstand that cracking pressure during moisture fluctuations a lot better. Normal people's solution is to go to the store and buy limestone dust. However, eggshells are 97% calcium, and I produce them right here on the farm. All winter, I save them in layers 1 or 2 deep in perforated seedling trays so air can circulate around the entire shell. Once a tray is full, I'll let it dry for a few more weeks by the wood stove, then dump all the shells into a bucket. Then, when it comes time to plant tomatoes and I've dug all the holes, I crush the shells and throw the dust into those holes before planting the tomatoes. One thing I've noticed over the years is that it's pretty important to make sure the eggshells are fully dry and that you don't have a lot of food residue on the shells. If you do, you're bound to have things dig up your tomato plants and get at the food that they can smell. Those things are likely to be rats, skunks, fox, and any other annoying creature with a good sense of smell. This year, my tomatoes are not as big as they normally are when I plant them into the hoop house. I think that's because I didn't put my usual effort into going out each night and covering the natural heat mat. Plus, it's been a cold spring. Those two things in combination have resulted in slower than usual spring seedling growth. I'm not too worried. They'll jump up quickly once they're in the ground in here. But, since they are small, I wasn't planning on digging holes to the same depth that I normally do, and was hoping I could just use a trowel to move some soil aside and stick the plants in to disturb the bed as little as possible, since it's been solarized. However, it only took me 2 holes worth of digging to realize I just wasn't up for it. With my hand the way it is, and with so many rocks in this soil, it's just not feasible to be crouched down using a hand trowel to plant in this bed. So, it was back to my trusty spade. I'm still going to try to disturb the soil as little as possible, but the spade is a lot easier. If you recall from way back this winter when I ordered seeds, I discussed the fact that I'm going to be trialing a few new varieties of greenhouse cucumber because the ones I've bought for years are no longer available. I'm not going to be putting eggshells under the cucumbers because it's not necessary. Those will just go under the tomatoes. What the cucumbers will get, though, is an extra dose of compost. The tomatoes will get some too, but not quite as much as the cucumbers, which, in the cucurbit family, are compost-loving. When I built this garden cart, which is the second, much improved version of an original prototype, I made sure to design it so the wheels and the supports that are back near the handles are spaced so the entire cart can roll over a 30-inch bed without disturbing the plants in that bed. In other words, the wheels and legs land in the walking paths to either side of a bed. To be honest, I haven't really used that function to its fullest potential. However, Since I'm going to be trying to mulch my beds with more compost, in the mold of Charles Dowding, who I've mentioned previously, I need a way to move a lot of compost efficiently, especially with only one hand in real working condition. The modifications I made to the wheelbarrow work well, but I need a way to move even more material even more quickly. So, it's time to put this design to the test. Alright, so that was a little more than half a row, and I'm still not sure how thick the compost mulch is going to be, but I've got 4 rows, so I figure I'm going to need at least 8 trips on this thing. I need a little break right now from that, so I'm going to go plant my peppers. I can mulch that over the next couple days, a little bit to a time, after I drop the kids off at school and before I start work. So maybe a couple loads of compost, 1 row per morning. That's a good little morning project before it gets too hot. So I might be able to do a little bit more tonight once it cools off. It's pretty humid right now, so it ends up being hard work. I mean, it's hard work anyway, but it feels like harder work when it's super muggy out and buggy. Speaking of bugs, I don't know if that's dirt or what, but anyway, I'm gonna go plant some peppers now in the other hoop house that was just moved yesterday.